Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into the last team preview video. I am wrapping up my 32 team series where I went through every single NFL team to give you my thoughts on their roster for the upcoming season. We're less than 2 weeks from the opening kickoff between the Bucs and the Cowboys. I cannot wait for it to get here. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get into today's video. If this is your first time listener, you're just gonna go right through it with me. I'm not gonna explain how I'm gonna do it, just because I hope you watched the other 31 videos. If you haven't, go check them out. And because there are so many stats I have to go over from this Bucks team, so I just want to go ahead and get into this episode. So let's just go ahead and start on Coach Bruce Arians, coming off his big Super Bowl win. Congratulations to him. He's been one of my favorite coaches in the league ever since he came to Indianapolis way back in 2012, whenever it was Andrew Luck's rookie year. Coach Pagano had I think it was leukemia, but he had a cancer diagnosis, which forced him to, he had to go to the hospital to take care of that. Coach Arians stepped in, filled in nicely. He galvanized the team. The team went to the playoffs, and that year actually led to him getting the job in Arizona. I was rooting for him to maybe get the team over the hump and win a Super Bowl there. Just didn't happen. Took a break, and then he came back to Tampa. He obviously has already proven he was the right guy to get the best out of this roster, and he made it work with Tom Brady in their first year, when some people wondered if their two different personalities would be able to mesh, and he just made it work, and now he's one of the best coaches in the league. Let's just go ahead and keep it moving to the team's remaining cap space. This is kind of a laughable number. So the Bucks are sitting at $346,057 in cap space. The next team, obviously that's the lowest number in the league. The next team's at like 2 million. So what a wide difference. As John Hammond would say on Jurassic Park, the general manager Jason Light spared no expense in terms of making sure they retained everybody from last year and making sure that they are going to give Tom Brady another push for another Super Bowl. And you could see like how many guys they brought back on like 1-year deals, or guys that maybe they weren't able to work out a long-term extension. When you take a look at those notable players entering a contract year, obviously they have no money to give anybody a pay raise now. They're going to have to figure out who's going to be on the roster going forward after this year. It's going to be a very interesting thing to see. Obviously, Chris Godwin's going to be somebody they want to work something out. He is playing on the franchise tag. Carlton Davis, Jason Pierre-Paul, Ryan Jensen, Ndamukong Suh, Gronkowski, Fournette, Antonio Brown, Jordan Whitehead, O.J. Howard, Ronald Jones, and Alex Cappa. All those guys are either starters or they're important role players on this year's team, and all of them are set to enter free agency after this year. So Bucks are all in on winning the Super Bowl, and it's going to be pretty interesting to see what this roster looks after this next wave of free agency in 2022. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and keep it moving though to the offensive preview. Taking a look at the projected starters, these are pulled from the Prospect Encyclopedia. In case we have any first-time listeners, I will explain this really quick. The Prospect Encyclopedia, every team has a top 22 player list, and to make that list, you have to have less than 12 regular season starts. So those guys are just entering the league, maybe been in the league for a couple years. They're anywhere from core special team guys to future superstars. If you see any stars next to the names, that means they have a report written by me. I did do the Bucks section, which you can go check out for free at prospectencyclopedia.com. And what's pretty interesting is, so the Bills only had one Prospect Encyclopedia player that was inserted into the starting lineup, but the Bucks have 0. And the reason why is because they retained all 22 starters from the Super Bowl last year. So yeah, let's just go ahead and start with the legend himself, Tom Brady. Obviously, we know Tom Brady's the greatest player to ever play in NFL history. I've gotten to that point. Younger people that knew younger Cody would never thought they would see the day where they would see Cody admitting Tom Brady is the best ever, but it is. You can't deny what he's done for such an over 2 decades at this point. He has you could compare each decade and say it's a Hall of Fame career. He's at the age of 43 doing this stuff. I mean, I'm 33. He's 10 years older than me out there dicing up the NFL. So You got to give kudos to him, and it looks like it's not going to stop anytime soon. I know he wants to play, I think, at least until he's 45, if I remember that quote right. But taking a look at Tom Brady since 2018, one thing on him, he's tied right now for the 7th longest active streak with at least one passing touchdown. He's got 7 games in a row. And then some other stats that he popped up on. He's got the 4th most passing touchdowns. He's got the 5th most passing yards, and he's tied for the 7th most rushing touchdowns. So for me on Tom Brady in terms of fantasy, yeah, I mean, I can understand you drafting him because he's in a top 5, top 10 offense. They're going to be consistently moving the ball. They're going to be in scoring position more times than not. He's got a number of weapons he can spread the ball to, so he's probably going to have a strong season again. He threw for 40 touchdowns last year. So yeah, I mean, he's probably a guy you can draft. Now, with Tom, how I view him though, I think there should be some type of expectation. Maybe he might have like down weeks for him, but I think he's going to have a lot of spike weeks throughout the year. I just think there's going to be maybe some games where they're like leaning on Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones, and maybe Tom's not getting a lot of passing yards, but maybe he might make up for that with touchdowns. So I think we're going to see another strong season out of him, and he definitely seems like he could potentially be a plug-and-play guy. I just wonder if there maybe be like I don't know, 2 to 4 weeks where maybe he's not getting a lot of passing production because they're doing so much great work on the ground, and maybe they're blowing out some teams and he's not playing all 4 quarters. Taking a look at the running back position, this is a running back by committee this year, especially with the addition of Giovanni Bernard. As far as, let's see, how do we want to, let's start with Leonard Fournette, since I got some stats on him that he popped up in my summer research. Leonard Fournette, since 2018, he is one of 9 running backs that have averaged 50 plus rushing yards per game and 25 receiving yards per game. And then among running backs since 2018, he has the 9th most receptions. So he was definitely a great benefit to the Bucs last year in the later part of the year as they got into the playoffs. He's been effective with his receiving ability, but I do understand, like, in terms of fantasy, I'm avoiding any of these. I'm avoiding any of these backs just because I think all 3 backs are going to be seeing the field throughout games and throughout the year. So Leonard Fournette, though, I think is going to maybe lead slightly in touches just because I think he offers more on the ground and as a receiver. The next guy, Ronald Jones, he runs the ball really great whenever he has the ball in his hands. He's definitely effective at times with his touches, but his deficiency is he's not that great of a receiver. So he's probably going to be working in those 1st and 2nd downs, maybe rotating series with Leonard Fournette. So yeah, that's another guy I'm not trying to draft because I don't think he has the receiving upside at all this year because of the addition of Giovanni Bernard. Speaking of him, he comes down from Cincinnati. How I view Giovanni Bernard is everybody remembers how James White was used up in New England. Well, that's basically going to be Giovanni Bernard in Tampa. He's probably going to come down mainly on 3rd downs, 3rd and long situations, 2-minute situations. He's going to be utilizing screens. He's going to be Tom's trusty dump-off guy if everything's covered down the field. And that's how I think his role is going to be. So you're going to probably see Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones rotate series probably for the 1st and 2nd downs. Leonard Fournette may stay on the field at times on 3rd downs because he is a decent receiver. And then I think mainly Giovanni is going to handle the most of the 3rd down work. Now, I will say this though, if people start to get hurt, like maybe value grows in Ronald Jones, maybe value grows in Leonard Fournette, but even in Giovanni Bernard, if the top 2 guys were to go down, Giovanni might be a sneaky fantasy play. But for me, I'm kind of avoiding them. Now, if I like them better than the other options during my fantasy drafts, I might take them to be on my bench. But there's no chance I want to take them to be as a starter that I want to count on to be productive week in and week out. Let's go ahead and go into their loaded wide receiver group, one of the deepest groups in the league. Not only because of the top three guys in Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans, but they got Tyler Johnson coming off a good rookie year. They got Scotty Miller himself, who can stretch out the field and who will work himself in the rotation. Just drafted Jalen Darden. So got a lot of wide receivers that Tom can spread the ball to and pick defenses apart with. Let's see. So Chris Godwin, he's playing on a franchise tag. He's looking for his first big NFL contract. So he's definitely going to want to put out his best performance this year. I know at the tail end of the last year, he was kind of dealing with I think it was a finger injury, which I think was not helping him with his case of drops that he had at moments. But I think you're going to see him come back. He's going to dominate that slot role. He's going to work himself open and take advantage of guys on the outside with Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, and the tight end. So I think he's going to have a strong year. One stat he did pop up on for me is he's actually tied for the 7th most receiving touchdowns by a wide receiver since 2018. He has 23. So he has a knack for finding the end zone. And then moving on to the other two wide receivers, take a look at their stats. Mike Evans has been one of the most productive players ever since he's entered the league. But looking at the last 3 seasons since 2018, Mike Evans has the 3rd most receiving touchdowns. He has the 4th most receiving yards. He's got the 7th most receiving yards per game, and he's got the 9th most fantasy football points per game. Now, all those stats I just mentioned are all among only wide receivers. And then on this stat, this is among all skill position players. He's tied for the 10th most total touchdowns. So he's been one of the more productive guys in the league. He's been a wide receiver 1 in terms of fantasy. I still view him in that realm just because how talented he is. I do think he's the lead dog in this room, even though, you got Antonio Brown there. Chris Godwin has every right with the argument of his talent. But he's the go-to guy for me that I think Tom will depend on. Not only because he brings that red zone big body threat that he's been proven to score a lot of touchdowns in, but he can also stretch the field with his speed and his ability to go on those go routes too. So he's going to still see his significant role in this offense. So I don't expect that to change. Maybe he has more down weeks and spike weeks this year because maybe Antonio Brown will be more comfortable and be used more in the offense. But other than that, I still think Mike Evans is going to be very productive this year. And then in terms of Antonio Brown, to wrap up the wide receivers, he actually popped up on some stats since 2018. Now keep in mind, one of those seasons was the year he went to the Raiders. The Raiders, that whole drama there, got released, signed with the Patriots for 1 game, and then got released there. And then he was a free agent for the rest of the season. And then he joined the Bucs last year. He was suspended, I think 8 games. And then he joined them on the second half of the season. But that still didn't stop him from popping up on some stats I collected. Let's take a look at his stats. He's currently actually on the 2nd longest active streak with at least 1 reception in a game. He's got 137 games in a row. He's one of 8 players with a season of 80 plus receptions, 1,000 plus yards, and 10 plus touchdowns. Since 2018. Now, obviously, that season came back since I think that 2018 when he was with the Steelers. So that's where that one comes from. It's not like it was from the last 2 years. And then some other stats he popped up on. Now, this may intrigue some fantasy football players. He's actually got the 4th most fantasy football points per game since 2018 among wide receivers. So that was something I found interesting. And then he's tied for the 8th most receiving touchdowns. And then he's got the 9th most receiving yards per game. Now, let's admit, like, some of these stats may be kind of skewed because there are a couple of years he did not play, but you could argue too if he did play majority of those 2 seasons, his numbers could be even better. So I'm not sure how to gauge Antonio Brown for fantasy this year because it feels like he could be a sneaky good like wide receiver 2 or 3 on your offense or on your roster, and he could provide you value and end up being like a wide receiver 1 if he actually comes back to being the Antonio Brown that we saw at one point. It is gonna. I'll be admit, it's pretty hard to figure out which Bucs wide receiver do you want. It's like Mike Evans. You feel like you're gonna at least get those touchdowns out of him, but maybe his yards come down this year because of all the mouths that they need to feed. Chris Godwin, like I mentioned, he's in a contract year. He's going to want his first payday, so he's going to want to rack up the receptions. Tom has a history of working the slot wide receiver. That's Chris Godwin's role, so he can potentially be like a PPR guy. He maybe might not get the touchdowns, but he's going to get you a lot of receptions and a good decent amount of yards. And then Antonio Brown is just a wild card, right? So it's like, is Antonio Brown just going to have a small role and be, slightly productive? Maybe he's more of a bench play that you can slide in during bye weeks or injuries, or is he going to be, like I just mentioned, the old Antonio Brown, and he's cutting into Mike Evans and Chris Godwin's targets, and he's dominating cornerbacks once again, and he's being productive himself. I could see myself taking a swing on all three. Let me just say that I could see myself taking a swing on all three. I think all will at least provide some type of value throughout the season. It's just that it's kind of hard to gauge, just because not only they have those three talented guys, they got some guys like Scotty Miller behind them that will work in the rotation. And let's just move on to the tight ends. They have a loaded tight end group, starting with Rob Gronkowski. Like I mentioned, people, I have a lot of stats I'm going over on this team, so that's why I wanted to dive right into it. So Rob Gronkowski, he obviously, he had his year with the Patriots, and then he took 1 year off, and then he came back to the Bucs last year, and they had to help them win the Super Bowl. And he did pop up on some of the stats since 2018. He's got the fourth most yards per. Now, keep in mind, these are among tight ends only. He's got the fourth most yards per reception. He's got the seventh most receiving yards per game, and he's got the 10th most fantasy football points per game. So he's going to be back in his role. There's nothing that's going to change about him. I definitely understand taking a chance on him in fantasy, because he's gonna be part of the offense. He's going to be on the field more times than not. He's going to be another red zone threat for Tom when they get to the end zone. I just kind of find myself staying away from the tight ends there in Tampa this year, just because I can see some inconsistent fantasy numbers out of them, just because of those three wide receivers I just mentioned. And they got Giovanni Bernard, who's going to play a factor in the passing attack. And they get this guy back, O.J. Howard. Don't forget, he was very effective with Tom on the field up until he tore his Achilles last year. Now, I think he's kind of having a slow return from his injury, so he may not start the beginning of the season, which maybe gives Rob more value to begin the season. But once O.J. Howard's on the field, I think he's going to be utilized in their passing attack. He actually popped up on some stats as well. Since 2018, O.J. Howard actually has the second most yards per reception, and he's got the 9th most receiving yards per game. So that's another guy that's you get to watch. I think him and Rob are going to dominate, the snaps in two tight end sets. And then they also got Cameron Brate, who has a good knack for finding the end zone himself, and he's going to be worked with inside the offense. So they got three tight ends, which I don't. If there's three good, not only you got Rob Gronkowski, who's a Hall of Famer, right? You got O.J. Howard, who has all the talent in the world, who just started putting it together last year before he got hurt. And then you just got a very good quality tight end in Cameron Brate, who could be a starter on any other team that needs a tight end. So I'm avoiding the tight ends in Tampa, but if maybe injuries started to happen, if maybe O.J. Howard is going to miss maybe a month or two to start the season, maybe I would consider Rob Gronkowski, maybe looking to see if he's available. And yeah, so that just to keep it moving, their offensive line was significantly improved last year because of the draft selection of Tristan Wirfs. Tristan Wirfs delivered at an all-pro level basically as a rookie, which is super impressive. So now that forms Donovan Smith still has his up and downs, but it's still a good tackle tandem between the both. Ali Marpet is a top 5 offensive guard in this league. Ryan Jensen is one of the better centers in the league, and Alex Kappa was having a really strong season last year until he got hurt, and Aaron Stinney stepped in. They still got both of those. It sounds like both of them are battling out for that spot, but overall, it's a very solid offensive line, and that should just be fine for them. Now, if you wanted to point out one flaw in this offense, it's their O-line depth. It's a lot of inexperience behind them. There are somewhat experienced guys, but if any reason the injury bug hit that group, that's where things could start to be develop inconsistencies in the offense, because everybody knows, if there is one way you can slow down Tom Brady, it's to get early, consistent pressure on him. So if anything happens to the line, that's where I see the problems happening for the Tampa offense. Other than that, they got so many playmakers, so many skill position players, and Tom Brady. This is going to be a top 5, top 10 offense once again this year. Let's just keep it moving, because as you just saw, I spent a lot of time on that, just the offense. This is a defensive preview. The projected starters are pulled from the Prospect Encyclopedia. This is per me. I did write the Buck section, which is that section is free to download at prospectencyclopedia.com. Let's just go ahead and start with their defense. Again, just like I mentioned earlier, just like the offense, they're returning all their starters on defense as well from the Super Bowl. So you're going to get a top 5, top 10 defense once again. Let's start with their defensive front. They got a really great interior defensive front, especially with the combination of Ndamukong Suh and Vita Vea. We saw the return of Vita Vea in the playoffs and what that did for that defense last year when he came back. Basically helped them get to the Super Bowl. And here's a little stat on Suh. He's tied for the second most fumbles recovered since 2018 at 6. And then let's take a look at the guys coming off the edge. They got, Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett. Both those form a really good, high-quality tandem that come off the edge to get pressure on the quarterback. And here's a little stat. They're both actually tied for the 8th most sacks since 2018. Both of them have 30.5 over the last 3 years. That's one thing I've been really impressed by, though. Like Shaq Barrett, obviously, he came into his own since he came over from Denver to Tampa and has became one of the better edge rushers in the league. But Jason Pierre-Paul has still been highly productive later on in his career, and he's putting together one heck of a Hall of Fame resume whenever he decides to hang up his cleats. So I expect those guys to once again be a vital part of their defense and getting after the quarterback. And one thing to watch too is their first round pick, Joe Tryon. He's going to be able to work in the rotation too to keep those guys fresh. And as we have seen in the preseason, he's been dominant at times. So I'm excited to see how Todd Bowles, their defensive coordinator, decides to utilize those 3 players and what type of exotic packages and schemes and blitzes that he can come up with to get after the quarterback this year between the two. And then taking a look at the inside linebacker tandem, I'll go ahead and say this is probably the best inside linebacker tandem as a whole in the NFL between Devin White and Lavonte David. Lavonte David definitely finally has gotten more respect nationally. I have always been aware of him. Obviously, I've been a big David fan since he's been in the league, and he's actually got the 5th most solo tackles since 2018. So he just flies all over the field, makes plays for this defense, and he's one heck of a linebacker that even after last year, I think he still deserves more respect than he is given. Now, Devin White is having a fast growth to becoming one of the better linebackers in the league. He's coming off an amazing season last year. He's actually one of 7 players with a season of 67 plus tackles, 13 plus tackles for a loss, 16 plus quarterback hits, and 9 plus sacks since 2018. Now, what makes that so great about Devin is the other 6 players that have a season of that over the last 3 years, they're either interior defensive linemen or they're edge rushers. He is the only linebacker that put up that stat. So that's unbelievable. He's so fast when he's on the field. And the fact that they got the speed with him and David, it just makes this defense so much harder to run on. And I mean, when you got Vita Vea and Suh commanding the presence up front, then you got Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett, they got to keep eyes on them. That's why Devin White and Lavonte David can just fly over the field and make plays. And then getting back to their secondary, entering last year, there was a lot of questions about their secondary. It was very, at that time, it was a very young secondary. There was definitely questions surrounding if that was going to be one of the weaker points of the defense. And as the season progressed, it became one of their stronger points. Carlton Davis is one of the top corners in the league. He's still working on becoming a better player, but he's continued his growth. He's shut down some good wide receivers in the league. Jamal Dean is a strong opposite corner of him that can create a pick six on any given moment. I really like Sean Murphy-Bunting. He's basically a playmaker in that nickel back spot with his ability to get his hands on the ball. And all three of them complement each other because they all kind of have their own unique skill sets, and I think they each three fill their roles pretty nicely. Now, and this goes for I'll just go ahead and say this though before I talk about the safeties. The one concern though about this defense is that like their secondary, the top is great, but if the any of those cornerbacks or any of the starting safeties were to get hurt, that's where you get your concern is their depth in the secondary. But yeah, other than that, they got a nice quality trio of starting cornerbacks, and then their safety tandem. Jordan Whitehead is a missile when he's on the field. He'll come up and lay somebody out. He's a very solid safety. And then my guy himself, Antoine Winfield Jr., came on strong. He filled that honey badger role within the Todd Bowles defensive scheme nicely. And he's going to continue his growth. And he's a guy can be a ball hawk in the back, and he can free range and cover behind the guys like Carlton Davis and Jamal Dean. Other than that, it's like a very, very solid secondary. You just want to see all those guys stay healthy because, I like Mike Edwards to work in if he needs to at the safety spot, but if you start to lose guys back there, that's when teams are going to be able to pick them apart throughout the year. But overall, it's a top 5 defense once again, and the fact that they got a top 5 defense to go, a potential top 5 defense to go with a top 5 offense, you got to like their chances to repeat this year. But yeah, let's just go ahead and wrap this up. Yeah, I basically just said what I'm about to say, huh? Yeah, this Bucks overall team, what's there to say? They're returning all 22 starters. Not only they return all 22 starters, they add a guy like Giovanni Bernard, which can help their passing attack on the offense. On defense, they add a Joe Tryon, which they can work in the rotation and create another ways that they can get after the quarterback with pressure between him, JPP, and Shaq Barrett. They're going to be very stout in the run because of that defensive front and Devin White and Levante David, and they got a really strong secondary. So as I mentioned throughout the video, the 2 weak points I would point out to for me is their O-line depth. If the O-line were to suffer any type of injuries, you get concerned about Tom having enough quality time to get the ball out of his hands. If he's going to be seeing early pressure, and then the depth in the cornerback room and in the safety room. They got a couple guys there that can work in if they need to, but if those guys start to get hurt in the secondary, that's going to cause some leaky holes. That's going to cause where some really good quarterbacks are going to be able to carve them up in the passing attack. Other than that, I see another great team in Tampa. They have everything back to go at another Super Bowl run. And then outside of health concerns, I expect the Bucks not only to be the team to beat in the NFC, but they're going to be the team to beat to win the Super Bowl. But yeah, that's my video for you guys today, and that wraps up my team preview video series. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be continuing to pump out content throughout the season. My next video, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I had some friends suggest some videos that maybe I could do. I just don't know if I'm going to have the time. Got some interviews lined up. I'm trying to switch out my day job in the next week, so I got to take care of those, make sure everything's square on my end. But I definitely plan on doing my season prediction video as I have in the past. I will do that a week before the season kicks off between the Bucks and the Cowboys, so look out for that next Thursday. I plan on releasing that, and then I probably will be doing, I'm gonna figure out how I will do my fantasy content this year. I'm still kind of working on an idea. Maybe I might be doing little short 10-minute videos, maybe on waiver claims and stuff. Instead of a whole episode, maybe I could just work on videos throughout the week. And then I will be doing my weekly prediction, weekly preview videos, if anybody remembers those from last year. I'm probably going to be getting a day job, so my content creation schedule will change, but those will probably, I was getting them out on Friday mornings. That may have to come out on a Friday night whenever I would get home to record that. I'll keep you guys posted on all that type of stuff. Other than that, yeah, one last thing to promote, the Prospect Encyclopedia. If you have not checked it out, please go check it out. You can go order it at Prospect Encyclopedia. Only for $15, by the way. I realized yesterday I misquoted and said $32. No, it's only $15. You can get all 32 teams prospect lists for $15. Basically, what you can expect out of it, every team has a top 22 player list. As I mentioned earlier in this video, it's guys from the last 3 draft classes that have less than 12 regular season starts, range from anywhere from core special team guys all the way up to potential superstars in the league. And here's a good thing too, if you're just a Bucs fan, you want to check out only the Bucs section, guess what? You don't even got to pay for that. We're actually giving that away for free. You can go to prospectencyclopedia.com, download the free PDF of the Bucs. You can go check it out, and if that impresses you, you can go buy the entire PDF for $15. Or if you maybe might be a fan of another team, you can order the other team's PDFs for only $1. Now let me get this out right, not like I did yesterday. Why spend $1 for one team when you get all 32 teams for $15? But yeah, that's my video, guys. More likely you will see me next Thursday, but if there's anything I can think of and do a video on between now and then, you might see me earlier. See you guys.